Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to talk to you about success with employees, services, and contractors while you're living in Mexico. It's a really important topic and it's quite a bit different from, maybe if you're living in Canada or the United States. So I think I can give you some pretty good tips on how to get what you're looking for. Okay? First, let me say that I'm not a lawyer, and this is not a discussion about laws and regulations. They can vary from state to state within Mexico, and as I'm not a lawyer, I don't want to give you any legal advice on that. That you're going to have to go elsewhere for. Okay? What I want to try to do is help you handle the basics in terms of getting the services or the job done that you're looking for. Okay? So why do you want to listen to me? Well, I was a contractor, a general contractor in the United States for 25 years before I came to Mexico. And I've also run several projects within Mexico and had several businesses. I've been a serial entrepreneur. So I've had to deal with a lot of these issues over the last over the last 35, 40 years. This is coming from, and I just wanted to help people that I see online that they're having trouble, and I can see why they're having the trouble. So if you could follow these steps, I think it's greatly going to improve your chances for success in your project. All right, and that's what I want for you. I'm sure you want it for yourself, right? So let's get started, okay? My number one tip is going to be making sure that language isn't a barrier to understanding between you and either your employee, your service provider, whatever that may be, a contractor that's coming to work on your property, or an installer, or whatever it is. You want to make sure that language isn't a problem, and that's your responsibility. If you don't speak Spanish, or you don't speak Spanish well enough to convey what your needs are, then you need to get some help with that. Don't expect that to come from the worker, the employee, or the contractor. Oftentimes they will speak some English, sometimes they'll speak perfect English. But if you don't know that they speak perfect English, then have someone there, if you are unable to do it, to help you through that process. And that can be kind of a pain, and I feel for you on that. But if you want to have success, there needs to be an understanding between the two parties. There's just no getting around that. And if you can't explain and they don't understand, you're setting yourself up for failure before you even get started. So figure out a way to make sure that you are understood, what your requirements are, and that you understand also whatever the person is saying to you. Okay, so find someone to help you with that if you don't speak Spanish well enough to go through that on your own. Okay, the second tip is going to be to try to get a personal recommendation whenever possible. I know it's not always possible, but utilizing Facebook, your friend networks, whatever, try to tell people, like, this is what I'm looking for, this is the type of person I'm looking for, this is the job I need, this is the repair I want, and have you ever used anyone? How did it work out? Was it good? Can you tell me somebody? That's probably the number one way to get things done here from a reliable person, is to get another personal recommendation from either another gringo or your Mexican friends, whoever, just someone that you trust their opinion, and you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache versus trying to deal with somebody maybe that you don't know. And unfortunately, there are bad actors out there that can try to rip people off or not give the service or don't do the kind of quality that you would like. So always try to get that personal recommendation. It's really going to pay off. Okay. Tip number 3, try to get more than one person to look at your job and give you a price. That also sometimes could be tough. It depends on where you're living and what all your options are, but if you can get a couple recommendations from your friends and then bring them over, generally at separate times, and have them look over the work, talk to you about it. We'll talk about pricing and all that as we go along here. But then you can pick who best fits into your budget or your schedule, or who. Sometimes you just get a feeling about somebody. You feel like, hey, you know what? I like this person. I like the way they communicated with me. I think we'll work good together. Sometimes that's the only difference. Sometimes it could be monetary. It doesn't really matter. But if you can get yourself some options, that's good for you, right? Okay, so let's move on to tip number 4. Have a clear idea of exactly what you're looking for. And an employee, you want to know the hours and days you want them to work, the exact job you want them to do, if it's cleaning your house or maintaining your garden or fixing your car, whatever it is. Try to have as close to an exact idea of the work that you need done so that you could try to explain to them what that is. I see people all the time go to a mechanic that don't know anything about their car, and they just say, fix it. And that's about the worst thing you could do anywhere you are in the world. But let alone here in Mexico, you want to know as close as possible to what the problem is, where it is, and maybe even what it will take to fix it. And sometimes maybe you could utilize your same thing, your personal network, to get a guy over there to look at your car for you if you're a woman that needs your car fixed and you don't know much about cars. Ask one of your friend's husband if he could come over and try to figure it out with you, or give you an idea of what it might be, so that when you go to a mechanic, you sound like you know what you're talking about, which oftentimes will help you to make sure that they don't try telling you something that could be unrelated to your issue to charge you more. And also, just so that you could explain what you're looking for, what you want, and what you want fixed. Okay, that's super important. Just going there with kind of a blank check and saying, hey, just fix this thing for me. I don't know what's wrong. That's on you. You understand that, right? I mean, you need to be responsible to say, hey, you know what? I've got to understand what's going on here the best that I possibly can. Is it possible? Always no. And I don't blame you if there's some crazy thing going on in your house or your car or your life and you don't know what the issue is. But still, you could ask your friends. You could ask to see if you could get some help. And if you can't, well, maybe then you're going to have to call the plumber, and he's going to have to tell you what it is, and you're going to have to just think about it, or ask your friends, hey, this is what the plumber is telling me. Does that sound right to you? But this is what the exercise you want to go through, right? Okay, let's move on here. Tip number 6, have a good idea of the wages and prices in your area. Okay, so let's say you have somebody out to do gardening on your property, and you want them there one day a week. Okay, so I would ask your neighbors, your friends, your network, even online, make a post on one of the forums on Facebook or whatever they call them, groups, and ask people, hey, what are you paying for this? And then you'll have to take your individual circumstances into consideration, right? If you have a huge yard and you ask your neighbor who has a very small yard how much they're paying, obviously that wouldn't be fair to the person that you're asking to take care of your garden. So you want to have a clear understanding of kind of what the going rate is, and then you make adjustments based on your personal situation. Okay? And that might be a little harder in some contracting issues, but certainly, with services, you should be able to get those kind of things. So, and then in regards to contracting, same thing. Maybe talk to some friends, try to get an idea of what they think. And if they know someone who maybe had a similar situation to you, and ask them, hey, what did that end up costing you? And then you're going to have to take that with a grain of salt and try to apply it to your situation. Okay? Number 7, with services and contractors, ask them to prepare a budget. In Spanish, they call it a presupuesto. Ask them to give you a budget for the work that you're asking for. Obviously, you probably would not do that with an employee or a housekeeper or a gardener. This will be more like a service provider or a contractor. But ask them to provide you a budget, and ask them to separate the labor and the material costs. Now, this is kind of a mixed bag, I'll tell you from experience. I ask this every single time. I'm a professional, I know what to ask for. And oftentimes, the person I'm dealing with doesn't really understand how to do that, what I'm looking for, or just doesn't want to do that. And so, in those cases, you know, you're just going to have to kind of deal with the guy that you're dealing with or the company that you're dealing with. And if they just give you a pre-surplus, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you ask for this. You ask for, give me the labor costs and the material costs separated, and they will just give you a lump sum at the bottom that says, look, I want 10,000 pesos for the work. That could very well happen. It's happened to me many times. And so then you're just going to have to decide what you want to do about it. And the same rules apply, as I've already mentioned it. Talk to other people, try to find somebody who's had similar things done, and try to assess it that way. Kind of along those same lines is, if you're going to have, a fairly decent amount of work done at your property, and you bring in a contractor or someone who performs services, a plumber or whatever, electrician, is talk to them, tell them that you would like to pay for all the materials personally, and then you'll pay them directly for the labor. This is great on two counts. Number one, if you give a contractor, which is one of my next points, they're going to ask you for 50% up front. If you just do a job where they provide the labor and they provide the materials right off the bat, when you come to an agreement, they're going to say, okay, we want 50% of the money up front. And they'll tell you that that's for materials. And in some cases, that's totally justified, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem lies if they have an issue or you have an issue and they've already got 50% of your money, and they get in a car accident, or they get run out of town, or they're drunk at the bar and end up in jail. Well, your money is tied up that you paid for your materials. They may not have bought the materials, and that money is gone. And maybe there's something you can do about it, and maybe there isn't. So my advice would be to offer to buy the materials yourself, which actually helps these guys a lot, because then they don't have to worry about it. And it helps you, because if your contractor, your person, doesn't show up, leaves the job, doesn't want to do it anymore, has issues or problems, well, if you have the materials or you have the money to buy the materials still, well, you could just move on to someone else, and then you've got your materials there, or you have the money left to buy the materials so that the new person can take over, and you probably haven't lost very much, right? So that's a really smart way, and it's very common. They're used to that. You're not going to get a lot of pushback on that either, and it's really safe for you, because go with them directly wherever they need to go, Home Depot or the hardware store, whatever it is. Go with them if you can, and pay for it. A lot of times you could get them to do it for you. You can say, hey, what do you need? Let them tell you, and then say, how much does it cost? And they'll give you an idea of what it's going to cost. And then you can hand them the cash, especially if it's like a more day-to-day type stuff. I wouldn't do this for the whole project, right? If you're having a wall built around your house, I wouldn't give them 50% for that and say, okay, go buy the materials. But if he says, the plumber says, hey, I need a few parts and some glue and whatever little knickknacks that I need for this job, and he says, it's 500 pesos or something, and I'll go buy it for you. Well, you saved yourself a trip, and tell him you want a receipt. And generally speaking, I've had no issues having that happen. So I hope you're still following along. I don't want to go through this too quickly, but we'll move on now. Okay. Tip number 8 is going to be paying your labor costs weekly is very common. So let's say you're able to do what I'm telling you the best way, and you're able to say, okay, I'll buy the materials, you provide the labor, and then don't hand them the rest of the money for the labor for the whole job. Don't do that. What is typical here is that you could offer to pay him weekly for his guys on the job, whoever that is, however many that is, and you'll have to get an arrangement made for that. They might say, hey, I have 2 masons. They call them albañil. If they have 2 of these guys and 2 helpers, you ask them, okay, how much do your masons make and how much do the helpers make? and they'll tell you, and then you say, okay, I will give you the money for that each week. Okay, and then along those same lines, well, let's see, let's go here first. Okay, so here is going to be one that's going to definitely, this tip should help you a lot, and I still might be wrong. But ask for a time frame to complete the work. Okay, and then you're going to double that, and then you should be pretty close to how long it's going to take. I don't think it's done on purpose, but I don't think they're very accurate. Let's just put it that way. They're not very accurate when it comes down to this is how long the job is going to take. And oftentimes, maybe they don't understand. They just don't have maybe that same urgency about time that, maybe a lot of gringos, expats, immigrants have. So, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Double whatever they say so that you're not all disappointed, and you'll be probably pretty close then. And even then, you could still be off. So just be prepared for that, okay? And if someone surprises you by finishing on time, man, oh man, pat them on the back, maybe even give them a little tip, buy them dinner, buy them a 12-pack of beer, something like that, because it's kind of rare. And so you should reward people that are good and professional at their job, and make sure to recommend them. Okay, my friends, that's the first 10 tips I have for you on how to be successful in hiring and employees, contractors, services. Okay, so I hope some of those might have helped, and I'm going to have part 2 coming out here in just a few days with another 10 tips. So you'll want to definitely tune into that if you're planning to hire anyone for basically any reason. And all these tips will be very helpful, I think, if you can implement them into your next project. Okay, so thanks very much. I appreciate you watching. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, that would be great. If you want to share it and like the video, that would help me out a lot too. I'd appreciate that. So you'll see the part 2 coming very soon. Thank you. Bye.